She's played queens, criminals, and warriors, but the real Helen Mirren is far more fascinating than any role she's ever taken. Behind the polished red carpet appearances and the Oscar-winning performances lies a story most people never hear. A story filled with rebellion, controversy, and choices that challenged everything Hollywood expected from a woman. She's been praised, criticized, misunderstood, and yet she never stopped doing things her own way. But how did this elegant British star go from a theater rebel to one of the most powerful women in film? And what secrets has she kept hidden behind the spotlight all these years? You're about to find out. Helen Mirren may be known today as the epitome of grace and elegance, but her early years were anything but refined. Born to a Russian-English family in post-war London, she grew up in a strict, traditional household, where acting was considered more of a reckless dream than a real career. But Helen didn't care. By the time she hit her teens, she was already pushing against every expectation placed on her. She joined the Royal Shakespeare Company in her 20s, instantly making waves, not just for her talent, but for her bold, unapologetic presence on stage. While others stuck to convention, Helen was fearless. Her early performances were raw, sensual, and often controversial. Critics were divided. Some called her brilliant. Others accused her of being too provocative, even by avant-garde theater standards. And she didn't stop there. Offstage, Helen lived just as boldly. She embraced the counterculture of the 60s and 70s, experimenting with style, identity, and freedom at a time when actresses were expected to stay polished and silent. She was outspoken about her views on sexuality and personal autonomy, shocking even her own fans. She wasn't trying to be shocking, she was just being herself, and in doing so, she broke rules no one even knew were there. But Helen didn't care about fitting in. She had bigger plans. For most aspiring actors, Hollywood is the dream. But Helen Mirren wasn't like most actors. In fact, for years, she wanted nothing to do with it. She once called the industry shallow and obsessed with youth, refusing to chase fame or play the game the way others did. Instead, she built her career on British stages and screens, taking on complex roles that let her explore character over celebrity. While her peers were scrambling for blockbuster roles, Helen focused on art. She starred in Shakespearean dramas, gritty indie films, and period pieces that demanded depth, not glamour. And for a long time, that was enough. But as she grew older, something unexpected happened. Hollywood came calling, and this time Helen answered. Her breakthrough didn't come in her 20s or even her 40s. It came after 50, when most actresses were being pushed to the sidelines. Helen Mirren stepped into the spotlight. Roles in films like Gosford Park, The Queen, and The Last Station didn't just revive her career. They transformed her into a global icon. And the irony? The same industry she once rejected now couldn't get enough of her. She later admitted she never wanted to be a star. All she ever wanted was to be good. And somehow, by staying true to that, she became great. And yet, becoming a star wasn't the most surprising turn her life took. Helen Mirren has never followed the script, especially when it comes to love. In 1986, she met director Taylor Hackford during an audition for one of his films. He kept her waiting for far too long. Most people would have walked out. Helen didn't. That moment of frustration led to a relationship that would defy every Hollywood norm. For over a decade, they stayed together but refused to marry. Helen openly said she didn't believe in marriage, calling it an unnecessary institution. She wasn't afraid to speak her truth, even when it flew in the face of tradition. And for years, tabloids speculated, why weren't they tying the knot? Was something wrong? The answer? Nothing was wrong. Helen just didn't care what people expected of her. Eventually, they did marry, but not until 1997, more than 10 years after meeting. And even then, it wasn't some fairy tale event. No flashy photos, no media circus, just two people doing things on their own terms. Again. She also made another unconventional choice. She never had children. And unlike many celebrities who avoid the topic, Helen spoke openly about it. She simply never felt the urge. But that honesty didn't stop the judgment. Critics called her selfish, while others questioned her femininity. Still, she never wavered. For Helen, life was never about pleasing the crowd. It was about living authentically. But that wasn't the only area where Mirren shattered expectations. For someone with such a regal image, Helen Mirren has never been afraid to rattle cages. In fact, some of her most talked about moments have come not from her performances, but from her mouth. She's brutally honest, sometimes to a fault, and over the years that honesty has landed her in hot water more than once. One of the most explosive moments came in 2007 when Helen gave an interview that shook her public image. While discussing historical misconduct in the entertainment world, she said she didn't believe in condemning someone based solely on unproven accusations. In an era where the world was finally holding predators accountable, that comment hit like a thunderclap. Social media erupted. Critics labeled her tone-deaf. Fans felt betrayed. Others called her brave for standing up for due process. The backlash was intense and immediate. Helen later clarified her comments, saying she fully supported victims, but also believed in fairness and evidence. Still, the damage was done in some circles. It was a sharp reminder that even the most respected figures can find themselves under fire in today's hyper-reactive culture. But this wasn't an isolated moment. Helen has a long history of speaking her mind, even when it's unpopular. Whether it's calling out the British press, mocking Hollywood's obsession with plastic surgery, or throwing shade at political leaders, she's never sugarcoated her views. In a world where celebrities often play it safe, Helen refuses to be neutral, and that's exactly why people either love her or can't stand her. And her views on Hollywood's darker side have only added to the mystery. If you thought Helen Mirren only played tough women on screen, think again. Behind the scenes, she's just as bold, unapologetically fierce, unfiltered, and not afraid to speak her truth, even when it ruffles feathers. Early in her career, critics couldn't decide what to do with her. Some dismissed her as nothing more than a sex symbol, a label she absolutely hated. In interview after interview, she pushed back, frustrated that her craft was being reduced to appearances. During one infamous TV interview in the 70s, a male host pressed her repeatedly about her looks instead of her acting. Helen didn't flinch. She shot back with razor-sharp wit, leaving him visibly stunned on air. That moment went viral decades later, and it still feels electric. She's never shied away from calling out the industry's hypocrisy. During a live appearance on a UK talk show, when asked about the pressure for actresses to stay youthful, she didn't hold back. "Off," she said bluntly, drawing laughter and applause from the audience. It wasn't for shock value, it was frustration boiling over. She later explained she was sick of the idea that a woman's value diminished with age. But it's not just the industry she's called out. Helen has occasionally supported controversial figures and causes, leading to mixed reactions from fans. She's been praised for standing by her beliefs, but also slammed for taking stances some view as tone-deaf or overly contrarian. Even among her peers, Helen has had her clashes. While details are usually kept private, rumors have swirled for years about tense relationships with certain co-stars. She's hinted at professional feuds, once saying, "Not everyone in this business plays fair, but I don't have time for drama. I'm here to work." What makes her so unpredictable is that she doesn't care about being liked. She cares about being real. And in an industry built on image, that kind of honesty is rare and dangerous. Yet behind the confidence and controversy lies something deeply personal. Helen Mirren has always seemed unshakable, composed, confident, and fully in control. But even the strongest personas carry scars. And for Helen, one of the deepest came from something she rarely discusses. In the early 2000s, she suffered a devastating loss when her brother Peter passed away unexpectedly. They had been incredibly close, and the news hit her harder than most people ever realized. Publicly, it was barely mentioned. Privately, it changed her entire outlook on life. She later admitted that his death forced her to reevaluate everything: fame, success, even the meaning of legacy. In interviews, she became more reflective, more inward-facing. She talked less about movies and more about emotional resilience, about how no amount of critical acclaim could fill certain voids. For a while, she disappeared from the spotlight. No red carpets, no magazine covers. She chose quieter roles, avoided the Hollywood circuit, and let people speculate. But what was really happening behind the scenes was a personal reckoning, an attempt to make sense of grief in a world that never slows down. She's also hinted, carefully, at struggles with her own mental health, especially during that period. She never made dramatic confessions, but there were moments in interviews where her words carried the weight of someone who had seen real pain. She spoke about learning to be okay without pretending to be okay, and how true strength isn't loud, it's silent. Helen never made tragedy her headline. She simply carried it, quietly, with grace. And in doing so, she revealed something even more powerful than fame: depth. But even in her darkest moments, Mirren wasn't fading. She was preparing for something remarkable. Most actors wind down after a certain age. Helen Mirren, she lit a fire. Just when Hollywood usually starts ignoring actresses over 50, Helen started landing some of the most powerful roles of her life. And not just serious dramas. She was suddenly everywhere. From playing Queen Elizabeth II in The Queen, to firing guns in Red, and even joining the Fast and Furious franchise, Helen proved that age wasn't a limitation. It was her secret weapon. These weren't pity roles or token characters. They were complex, commanding, and at times completely unexpected. She was redefining what it meant to age in Hollywood, not by hiding it, but by embracing it. At a time when many actresses were being told to age gracefully and disappear, Helen walked red carpets in bold gowns, posed for nude photo shoots in her 60s, and gave interviews that were sharper than ever. Her confidence became iconic. Fans couldn't get enough. She was crowned a sex symbol again, only this time on her own terms. And the awards kept coming. An Oscar, multiple BAFTAs, Emmys, a Tony. She didn't just survive in an industry obsessed with youth. She dominated it. And in doing so, she gave an entire generation of women permission to be powerful at any age. But perhaps the biggest surprise is what she's doing now. You'd think someone with Helen Mirren's resume would be winding down by now, taking quiet roles, enjoying retirement, fading into privacy. But that's not Helen's style. Today, she's as active and surprising as ever. Not only is she still acting in major films and TV series, but she's also producing, mentoring, and using her platform in ways most stars never dare. At an age when most of her peers have disappeared from the screen, Helen is busier than ever. By choice. And the projects she's choosing, they're bold. She recently took on a controversial role as Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir in Golda, sparking intense debate about casting, identity, and politics. While some praised her performance, others criticized the decision. And Helen, true to form, stood her ground. She didn't apologize, she never does. But it's not just acting. She's become a fierce advocate for gender equality in the film industry. She mentors up-and-coming actresses and has said she's more interested in helping tell other people's stories now, especially ones that have been ignored. She also stunned fans by joining social media, not to chase clout, but to connect with younger generations in her own authentic way. Her Instagram isn't filled with glamour shots. It's playful, unfiltered, and real, just like her. And despite her fame, she now prefers a quieter life. She splits her time between homes in London and Lake Tahoe, often going weeks without being seen in public. But when she does show up, whether it's on a red carpet or in a surprise cameo, she always turns heads. Helen Mirren is no longer chasing the spotlight. She is the spotlight, whenever she chooses to be. And at this point in her life, that might be the most powerful thing of all. Helen Mirren isn't just a brilliant actress. She's a rule breaker, a survivor, a woman who's lived her truth even when the world pushed back. From rebellious beginnings to royal performances, from private heartbreak to public triumph, her story is one of defiance, depth, and constant reinvention. She didn't chase fame the traditional way, and she never let it define her. She refused to conform to Hollywood's timelines, expectations, or standards. And in doing so, she didn't just outlast her critics, she outshined them. There's a reason Helen Mirren still captivates audiences after all these years. She's unpredictable, unapologetic, and absolutely unforgettable. And if there's one thing we've learned from her journey, it's that the most powerful stories are the ones still unfolding. Want more stories like this one? Then don't miss our deep dive into other legends of old Hollywood, because the secrets they left behind might just change how you see them forever.